Deficit or development? This is a huge question in front of the policymakers, and this forms the basis of fiscal policy worldwide and also in India. Hello, I am Lakshman Maaheshwary, and today I am going to tell you about the fiscal policy in India. The fiscal policy is based on the theories of British economist John Maynard Keynes, and it is also known as Keynesian economics. It states that governments can influence macroeconomic productivity levels by increasing or decreasing tax levels and public spending. The use of government revenue collection and expenditure to influence the economy comes under fiscal policy. Fiscal policy can impact aggregate demand and the level of economic activity, saving and investment, income distribution and its elevation, social welfare and justice. Basically, there are three stances of fiscal policy. The first is neutral fiscal policy. It is undertaken when economy is in neither a recession nor a boom. The amount of government deficit spending is roughly the same as it has been on average over time. The next could be expansionary fiscal policy. Here, spending exceeds tax revenue by more than it has tended to. This is usually undertaken during recession. And lastly, it could be contractionary fiscal policy, wherein the deficit spending is lower than usual. It may be used to counter inflation. The fiscal policy reflects the priorities of individual lawmakers. At times, they focus on the needs of their constituencies or vote bank. These local or misplaced needs may overrule national economic priorities and interest and may lead to deterioration of the national economic status. Now let us understand the term fiscal straitjacket. It is a general economic principle that suggests strict constraints on government spending and public sector borrowing to limit or regulate the budget deficit over a time period. We will now talk about types of deficits. There can be revenue deficit or fiscal deficit, or there could be a primary deficit. We will talk about each of them now. The revenue deficit is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts, that is tax plus non-tax revenue. The fiscal deficit is total expenditure, that is revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus revenue receipts plus recoveries of loan plus other capital receipts, that is all revenue and capital receipts other than loans taken. Finally, we come to primary deficit, which is revenue deficit minus any interest payment on loans taken. Having talked about the deficits, now let us examine the components of spending. A government may spend on capital projects like infrastructure projects, dams, etc., or on maintenance of buildings, vehicles, and staff salaries. It may spend on loan payments, subsidies, welfare schemes, bailouts and write-offs, which include loan waiver, or they could even be wasteful expenses like full-page government advertisements in newspapers and ads on radios. To fund these expenditures, the government needs money. Now let us look at some of the methods of funding. The first and foremost is taxation. The other is seigniorage, that is the benefit from printing money. Another one could be borrowing money, either from the population or from abroad, or it could be fiscal reserves, prior surplus, profits from public sector undertakings, sale of assets, which is disinvestment, or sale of shares of PSUs. Now let us talk about the objectives of fiscal policy in India. The aim is to mobilize adequate resources for financing various programs and projects adopted for economic development, raise the rate of savings and investment for increasing the rate of capital formation, to promote necessary development in the private sector through fiscal incentive, optimum utilization of resources, to control the inflationary pressure in economy in order to attain economic stability, remove poverty and unemployment, growth of public sector for attaining the objectives of socialistic pattern of society, to reduce regional disparities, to reduce the degree of inequality in the distribution of income and wealth, and many more. Now here is an interesting data. Where are India's taxpayers? Only 2.9 crore Indians filed personal income tax returns for the assessment year 2012-13. That is less than 4% of the 760 million adults enumerated in the 2011 census. More than half of these 2.9 crore individuals paid no tax at all. That is, the country's direct tax base is dizzyingly narrow and it is often stated as the problem. This was reported by The Hindu on May 2nd, 2016. Now let us talk about some shortcomings of the fiscal policy of India. The first is instability, both political and economic. Second is defective tax structure. The tax structure is overly complicated and it has failed to raise the productivity of direct taxes, and the country has been relying much on indirect taxes. Further, there is a narrow direct tax base. Also, there is popularism in policy formulation. This leads to unproductive spends. Other problems are inflation, negative return of the public sector, tax evasion, which leads to black money and parallel economy, corruption, which includes bureaucracy-led evasion, and growing inequality. Now let us talk about the dangers of fiscal imbalance. In 1990-91, the gross fiscal deficit of India rose to an alarming 7.6% of GDP. This puts at risk the financial sovereignty and questions the credibility of country. It has been substantially reduced in the current years. The present outlook is much better. In financial year 2018, the centre's total income, as per the revised estimates, from taxes, non-tax revenues and capital items is estimated at 16.23 lakh crores. It is expected to incur a total expenditure of 22.17 lakh crores. Expenditure will thus overshoot income by about 36.5%, leaving a shortfall of 5.94 lakh crores. As a percentage of India's nominal GDP, which stands at 167 lakh crores as per latest estimates, it appears modest at 3.5%. With this, we come to the end of this session. We were talking about the fiscal policy in India. I am Lakshman Maaheshwary. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe and share to keep receiving important updates. Have a good day.